So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Michael Barnhart and Suzy Sevier. They've started their multifamily investing journey while working a full-time jobs under lockdown, still managing to organize and purchase an 88 property unit in 9 months while living 4,000 miles away. So this is pretty amazing. They're the founders of Adventurous Real Estate Investors. They specialize on return on impact. They'll talk about that, and it's really cool. You guys will really like this. Through real estate investing, they create immeasurable impacts in their family and their friends and their community and the families, the residents that they serve, and in the spaces where they want to be most generous, and that's everywhere and anywhere. So really appreciate you guys being on today. So tell us, where are you at and why are you there?
Hey, Andy. Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. I really appreciate that. And it's a pleasure being here. It's a real honor to be able to chat with you and your guest here on your meetup. So really excited to looking forward to providing value however we can. So Suzy and I are actually located in Cambridge, England. So it is midnight and 6 minutes after, and for us here. So we're 5 hours ahead of Eastern time, and we're actually here. Cambridge is like an hour north of London by train. So we're here because I am still active duty Air Force, and I was teaching at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs before coming here. And then they basically wanted me to continue teaching, so they sent me to get a PhD. And now I'm here at the University of Cambridge getting a PhD in biochemistry. When we're done here, which will be about a year and a half, we'll return back to Colorado Springs, where I'll continue teaching genetics and molecular methods, and then I'll retire from the military. That'll be my last tour. We'll retire and transition to real estate full time at that time. So we're about 7 years out from that, and let's see, I've been in the military for like 16 years, and I'll let Suzy go ahead and introduce herself.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm currently a program manager for a biotech company over here. So my current project is I budgeted a $6.1 million warehouse move transfer over in the Netherlands, but actually I get to retire from my W-2 much sooner than 7 years. So as of the end of August, I will be transitioning to real estate full time. So I will take over a lot of the acquisitions and do asset management, and then just have that nice transition when we move back to Colorado, just have that be a smooth transition, I guess, from one move to another in the military life, instead of the bumpy one where it's like, oh, what's next in my career? It's already chosen. So that's pretty nice.
That's awesome. Great. That's great. So now tell us, how did you guys what did you guys think of, where did this start, the idea of investing in multifamily investing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll even take it back a little bit, just so our whole entire journey, like Andy had mentioned, happened due to the lockdown. So with COVID-19 and the first lockdown over here, it was a little over 100 days, but we had no idea how long it was going to be and what that really meant. But what it turned out to be was that we were only allowed to leave our house once a day to work out, and we could leave to go to the grocery store or, go to the pharmacy, those critical, I guess. And yeah. And with that, we didn't know what we were going to do. And so Michael and I started a mini book club, and one of those books ended up being Multiple Streams of Income. And in that book, it talks about real estate investing. And the whole thing was that Michael would read the book and then I would read the book, except for this one. He was like, can you just read this chapter, please? This is really all that we need to focus on for today and the rest of the lockdown. And I was like, cool. And he's like, let's do this. And I just said, okay. And initially, actually, we were going to do birds, and because you listen to Bigger Pockets, and that's really what consumes you, I think, immediately when you first even Google real estate investing, right? And it talks all about single family homes. But so through that journey of listening to the podcast and reading all the books, we had made a Facebook post. And what this Facebook post led us was, this individual had said, you should go to this conference that is in like 2 weeks. And we were like, okay. And it was the Veterans REI conference. And through that conference, it talks about everything real estate, right? It talks about burst, fix and flip, short-term rentals, multifamily, it's like the whole thing. And multifamily definitely jumped out because Whitney Sewell had said, like, you don't need to start your journey in single family homes. Like, you can go straight into multifamily. But at the time we were like, single family seems a lot safer and a lot better. So why don't we just try this for now, right? So we had actually set up a whole entire team in a Midwest city in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and we had 2 properties under contract. But then, like, a risk happened, an unthinkable that we didn't think was going to actually occur, and an inland hurricane went through. So what that inland hurricane did was it made it so that we couldn't get financing for the 2 properties. And so we took a step back and we were like, okay, well, our 5-year goal was to have 25 single family homes. We would sell them and 1031 them into multifamily. So I guess we're going to skip the single family home part, and go straight into multifamily. And that's really, I guess, to like answer your question, what got us into multifamily, right? Because that inland hurricane, but then also like Whitney Sewell saying, like, you don't need to start with single family homes. You can just go straight into multifamily. And so that's when everything pivoted in regards of like the education that we were then consuming at that point, the meetups that we were going to, and we really like dove into conferences because we didn't know how long everything would stay virtual. So like we decided that we were just going to consume as much of it like as fast as we could.
Yeah, you're so right about that single family home the situation where you're going to put 50,000, like I was doing some math last year and I was going to buy a house. I was going to put ultimately 50,000 into this house and my return was going to be $200, per month. And I'm like, this is ridiculous, and all the work that goes along with it. Versus, if you passively invest in multifamily, you're getting sometimes 8-10% return, and that's your preferred return, and potentially more on top of that. It just makes a lot of sense. So it's a great point that you brought up, and it's interesting journey that how you got there. So you start taking these. So it sounds like you get into you went to this conference, and then what did you do from there?
Yeah, after that conference, like Suzy mentioned, we were kind of like on this single family track just because it was like a risk for us. Like we're like, okay, well, if we invest in single family, like at least it's just us, right? And we didn't understand, like it was like a mindset shift that had to occur for us to actually make that leap into multifamily. But after the conference, we had all the tools. We actually had like a Q&A, like as Suzy mentioned, like we had a Q&A directly with Whitney Sewell, and like he was just like mind blowing to talk to, like one-on-one. And then like I just asked him like, what was the one book that you would recommend reading if you were going to get into multifamily right away? He of course recommended Joe Fairless's book, The Best Ever Apartment Syndication Book. So if anybody hasn't read that and they're looking to get into multifamily, I'd highly recommend that. It's a textbook full of knowledge, and it is very dry, but it is textbook. So I love textbooks being a teacher. So it was very exciting for me.
That's cool. So, and then did you start, like, where did you go from there? Did you hit more conferences? Like, did you just read the book and, like, where did you go from there?
Yeah. So the first thing we did, we knew that, with multifamily investing, networking is like the lifeblood of everything, right? You could say that about life and you could say that about single family as well, but like literally, if you don't have a network in multifamily investing, like you need like a team, right? And you need vendor contacts, you need all these other contacts. So what we ended up doing was finding a meetup, and it ended up being Brian Briscoe's meetup, if you're familiar with him. He has a meetup on like Friday afternoons or whatever. Friday afternoon for Eastern time, that is 1 p.m. Eastern time or whatever. Anyways, we started off there, and literally we met everybody and every single meetup that we went to after that through his group, which is pretty incredible. So like he was kind of like the catalyst, his meetup was like the catalyst that started us on our multifamily journey.
But yeah, like even with that though, we decided that like the conferences, because they had so much like knowledge, but it was all different knowledge, right? Granted, they could have had a lot of the same information, but hearing it from different speakers in different words was like a huge part. So we ended up going to like 9 or 10 conferences total last year. And like through all of them, we learned a lot of different things. So granted, you know, that it seems like a lot of time, and it's like, well, what did you get from all of them? But like literally each one, we picked up something different. And the coolest thing actually about the conferences is that now that we've gone to so many virtual ones, we actually now can pick and choose the ones that we get to go to in person, right? I mean, yes, the networking component of like those in-person conferences is huge, but like I'll also know which ones I would prefer to go to in person. And one of the ones that really stood out was Adam Adams. And I say that because he talked a lot about like social media, and with that, like how you have to have that true identity change. And so what that meant, because we didn't think about it this way, is that like you need to be posting about real estate in order for your network to even know that it's something that you're doing, right? And like, because the team is the biggest part, it's like, well, how am I going to meet other people if, like, say, for example, you can't go to meetups, right? Or you can only go to one. And so you're meeting the same 20 people every week. Like, putting yourself out there, like, will slowly have people come to you, right? Because we all need those multiple touch points. Like, that will never go away, depending if you want to do a syndication or a JV or whatever route. Like, if people don't know that you're in the space, then they have no idea to talk to you about it. And so what we did is, like, with our blog content, we started talking about it. I mean, we joined a challenge. It was like Bill Allen's 30-day challenge, where you just talk about real estate or like what's going on in your life or how it's affected you, you know, just to have more people like watching your videos and learning more about you. And what came from doing some of that is that's how we found our boots on the ground partner, because obviously being across the pond, like we had to have somebody there. I mean, even if you're not investing in your backyard, like having a boots on the ground just to be able to go and see the asset before you submit the LOI, you know, or meet with a broker potentially that you have been communicating with on the phone. But so one of Michael's old classmates reached out and was like, hey, I've been seeing like your content and your posts on social media about real estate investing. Like, I have left the Air Force and now I'm in real estate full time. You know, he's a wholesaler and a flipper, but he had said that he wanted to move into multifamily. And that's how we got our boots on the ground. And that's literally like what helped us like spiderweb, I guess, across everything else. Because once we had our boots on the ground, we really knew what market we were going to choose, right? Because we had a criteria, but with your criteria, like a lot of different cities can potentially fit in that space, right? But so he had said like, oh, I'm in Oklahoma City now. Like, is this an area you'd be interested in? And we did the numbers and we were like, yeah, we like Oklahoma City, but we really, really, really like Tulsa. So like that gave us another advantage, right? In meetups, it'd be like, oh, this is our criteria and we're investing in Tulsa. So like we had another, I guess, point to be able to add, like, this is how we're one step closer to actually like taking down our first deal, because we've taken the like another little step to move forward. Because like that's the whole huge thing, right? Is like just doing being 1% better every day and taking like one extra step every day in order to like get to those goals. So I guess from the original question that you asked, like in combining with the conferences and then like finding different meetups through going to meetups, like that's what landed us to our boots on the ground. Because like all of that networking is really what connected us to another individual.
That's fantastic. There's a lot there. That's really cool. So going from the conferences, you know, and I don't know how many people in the audience have gone to conferences. Sometimes they cost a little money, but at the end of the day, like those contacts are like indispensable. Like it is so important to get those contacts. And it's interesting you said Adam Adams. He's going to be my guest next month, so he'll be on. So swing by and see him. And he's a fantastic guy, and he's got some really great wisdom there. So you're so I guess I'm going to back up to the start where you said you're hitting these conferences and you're hitting, you said you hit 9. So how did you connect with these people? Like, you're virtual, and how are you connecting with them? And like, then when you connected with them in the conference, then what was your follow up, and like, how did that look, that whole process there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there was a mix of what we did. So like if there was a traditional like breakout room style, like we would like take down their information, and like we were very intentional, right? It was like, okay, well, we don't know if these people are GPs and LPs, right? Because a lot of us will end up like doing both in our lifetime. And so we were like very intentional with, okay, whoever we're with in a breakout room, like we will reach out then on LinkedIn or via email and ask to do a one-on-one. But then beyond that, right? Like say there wasn't that traditional breakout room, like sometimes people would make a like Google sheet and put every, your contact information in. And what we noticed is that like sometimes there would be a list of 150 people, but nobody was actually reaching out. And it was like, whoa, like this is totally underserved. Like this is something that we actually have to like follow up on. And yes, sending 150 emails seems very tedious, but like even if you get, 5 people to respond to you, if one of them ends up investing in your deal, then sending that 150 initial emails was worth it, right? Like, because that ROI, like from the initial conference, then it totally makes sense. But then we also, sorry, like one more layer is that if there wasn't a sheet and there wasn't a breakout room, we would actually snip like the people's names, right? Like even right now, like I would take a screenshot and reach out to them on LinkedIn and say like, hey, I saw you were attending, whatever conference, like what was something that you learned? What was your favorite part about it? And like just starting the conversation that way, because then it could lead me to ask like, oh, what are your investment goals for the year? And then, that's what you find out if like they are GPs or if they're in your area or if they can have an introduction, it's just like, it's amazing how many different ways there actually is to connect with people virtually, right? Because in like a traditional in-person setting, like I could not, just take like a mental photo of everyone and be like, oh, I'm going to find that photo on LinkedIn, and so like it just, for us, it's just been like a very like successful thing. And, it is scary to like reach out to these individuals, but like the thing is that like I actually started not taking things personally, right? So if out of 100 people, if majority of them didn't respond, like that's totally okay. Like, like move on to the next. Like they're allowed to say no, and it's not because it's of me. It's just like I'm not in like their life at the right time, and it's just like continuing that persistence, because that's all it is really. It's like taking everything that you do, finding the good in it and just moving forward. So for me, it was like, oh, I'm just practicing, right? Like, because everything is practice, and that's how you get more comfortable at something. So it's like, well, I'm going to keep doing this so that I feel better about it moving forward and continuing to go,
Yeah.
And just because they don't reach out to you immediately or respond within a week or something like that, like we actually just had a couple people reach out to us that we've emailed like several months ago, and they're like, hey, we got your email, I flagged it, I've been following you guys on social media or whatever, and I'm ready. Let's hop on a call and chat, right? So
Cool. That's
it's like
great.
they're there, they're following in the background, so
Right. So you mentioned, yeah, that is really cool. So you mentioned the blog and social media. And so what have you found? Is it the blog that gets a lot of traction? Is it your social media presence? Like what has worked well for you guys?
Oh, so I was going to say, at the very beginning, it felt like nothing was working. And I only say that because it's almost funny that we assume that people are going to read like our first few blog posts or watch our first videos, right? Like, why would anybody take the time to actually do that? Because they haven't seen our touch points, right? And so like getting over that belief at first is actually like really great to do. But what really like helped us was the consistency. So they continued to see blog posts, and then they started to see videos, you know, and then now we've gotten better at videos. And so like now there's closed captioning. So we cater to the people who like want to watch a video, but just want to read it, you know, and like they like the visuals. So along the way, I guess now what's been the best is the videos, but then once you post them, like actually interacting back, you know, and then interacting with others on their videos, because that's like deep down, like humans want to just be like heard and acknowledged. So like if I want that as an individual, I'm going to have to assume, you know, that individuals want that as well. So it's like back and forth, you know, is that showing like, because why would we expect people to comment on all of our stuff if we're not commenting on theirs? So it's the consistency of doing both, you know, like finding that balance of like, well, if I'm out there expecting this of others, then I need to also serve others as well and do that for them.
That reciprocity, right? Yep.
Mhm.
That's cool. And if you guys haven't seen their videos, they are really good videos. There's like the one in particular where you guys were like adventurous, and then it was like another word, adventurous. I was just like, I was like captivating. It was really cool. I really enjoyed that one. So
That's cool.
yeah,
I'm glad that came out. I'm glad that came out well, because it was like a vision in my head.
Yeah.
I was like trying to explain it to our video editor, and I was like, "Okay, see if I can do." Because it came to me like we were like out on an adventure,
Yeah.
hiking and stuff like that, and I was like, "Okay, this would be an awesome like, if you want to call it like commercial or whatever."
Yeah.
But I had this awesome vision in my head. I'm glad I was able to communicate it well enough.
It was great. It was epic. It was awesome. You know, I tell my wife sometimes my visions, and she's like, "You're crazy, Andy." And it's just glad that you guys get together and you do it together, and it's cool. It's awesome.
Thank you.
So nice work with that. Okay, so you met your boots on the ground, and then you connected there. And how did you guys form? You know, so it was a friend from high school, right? And or college, and how did you guys connect and say, yeah, you're going to do this, and you know, partner up? And then who found with this first property? Who found the property? Kind of just walk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like Suzy and I were like, hey, you know, we could do a majority of everything from overseas. Like I can build the broker relations, I can underwrite. Suzy can work on the marketing piece and investor relations, stuff like that. And like we can kind of divide and conquer. The only thing we're missing is somebody like a boots on the ground person that can like walk and touch the asset, especially during COVID where there's travel restrictions right now. And so, yeah, Treen was our boots on the ground, and him and I were classmates at the Air Force Academy, and we knew each other for like 16 years now, and so there's a lot, and so like it was already like this know, like, and trust with him, like because we went through basic training together and things like that, and so it was great. So like, hey man, would you mind being our boots on the ground? Like, since you're interested in getting multifamily, would you mind? Hey, you're gonna go walk these assets for us, like take these pictures, ask these questions and things like that. He's like, yeah, absolutely, I got it. I was like, cool. And so we started just reaching out. I started reaching out to as many brokers as possible. And also at the same time, we're networking every single week, every single night with new people, trying to meet people in our space, in our market and stuff like that. And during that time as well, like while we were looking at properties, like, so we started to get some deal flow, started underwriting and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, I'm like, I don't even know, like, I've taught myself how to underwrite. I've watched, you know, I've read, I've watched and everything like that. I don't know if this is actually, if what I'm doing is actually correct. So like the next step for me to make me feel comfortable and confident was actually finding a mentor to like look over all of my underwriting. And actually we ended up meeting Carl, who's part of Trident Multifamily. He is my mentor, our mentor. He's just been a blessing for us. Like we met him organically, just through networking like this. Somebody had made an introduction. He's like, hey, this person's in Tulsa. He owns a bunch of assets there. Maybe you should like check him out, like get on a call, whatever. So we did, we chatted. And then after that, like I was like trying to find ways to like provide value for him. Like I noticed like on his website, he had like an education piece that he was working on for like his investors. And so I was like, perfect. Like I've taught at the Air Force Academy. Like I've built courses from the ground up. Like I know how to build courses where it's like an active learning experience for the consumer. And so I was like, here is everything that I have on like building courses from A to Z, right? And I want to provide this with you. Would you mind, like, you know, and I just kept providing more and more value however I could. And then after that, like, I was like, hey, would you mind like looking over my underwriting? And then we can meet like once a week. Well, he knew that I was like taking a bunch of action, and he saw that like he would give me, you know, some ideas and then I would run with it, right? And he knew that I would continue to follow up and continue to take action. And so like he's like, yeah, I can give you my time now that I know that you are like serious about this. And so we started meeting like once a week, and today, to this day, we still meet like once a week. We're like really good friends now. We were just like chatting with him just shortly before this, because like, you know, we chat about other things too, right? Like when we're growing our businesses together, which is really awesome. But he was critical because he gave me the confidence, and because he looked over my shoulder, looked at my underwriting, and was like, he didn't tell me what to fix, right? He's like, hey, maybe you should look at this, or maybe here's how you would figure out this a little bit better, or figure this out, right? And so it was awesome. Like having somebody, a mentor in your market, in your specific market, in your specific sub-markets that you're investing in is huge, because they know the expenses and they know, you know, all of the assumptions that you need to make in order to make sure your underwriting is conservative for that market.
But even something else, like the consistency and just doing what we said we were going to do was like that huge momentum. And it's something that not very many people do. Like, and it's so simple, right? Like if you have said you're going to do something, just do it. And even in regards to like yourself, right? Like if you tell yourself you're going to like underwrite a property one day, like do it. And that's how you like end up with those little steps, you know, to get you to the places you want to be. Because like while this is all happening, right, there's like so many little more pockets that you have to think about with syndications. So like at the same time, we have to be raising capital, you know, we have to have investor relations. So like while we're networking and going to conferences, they're still writing blog content in the background. And then, like I said, the investors part. So like with all of this too, we were having 20 to 25 investor calls a week.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, so, like, because I don't want this to ever sound like it was just easy, you know, and like this deal just like fell into our lap. There's a lot that has to go into it. It's like a constant, like, you know, I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes sense to me. And, you know, it's just finding that really perfect balance. And although the balance like seems very chaotic at the beginning, you know, like Michael and I there were lots of times where we're like, we have done so many calls and we're networking on the time, but like, where is that getting us? You know, I'm sure a lot of people are like, well, I've been doing this for a really long time. Like, when is the deal going to happen? You know, but like with all of those steps, like just compounding and compounding over and over and over, like that is truly what gets you to that steps, you know. And people had seen that Michael and I were consistent with networking. And so that's how the introduction even happened, right? Because I mean, in every networking event, like you could meet this person in this market and this person in this market, and like then you never see them again. So it makes you weary to like do, you know, 10 introductions after each networking event, because you don't really know if you'll ever see the people again, right? But like when you see the people showing up over and over and over, like that's when you can tell that they're serious. And that's when like people are willing, you know, to like give like, I guess, their expertise and give you their information. Like it doesn't just come freely, right? It's like from showing up and being consistent all of the time.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. And that you're spot on, because this is a lot, like doing syndication and even just getting up to speed. It is a ton of work. You know, you're connecting with people, you got property managers you're thinking about, attorneys, you know, tax engineers, you name it, all these service providers, and your investors and your investor relations. So there's a ton of work there. And you know, it takes a village, right? Especially on the multifamily side. So now you had mentioned that you guys split up the work. Tell us a little bit about that. Like who's doing what, and then you have partners in this deal. Let's talk about this particular 88 unit deal, and who does what in that, who did what in that deal, and who's the asset manager now, and who's kind of managing it from here.
Yeah, so because Suzy and I kind of told our partners like, hey, we're going to be we can do as much as we can do, right? Like, and another thing too is like, since it was our first deal, I wanted to at least experience, like do as much as we could and experience every little piece all the way from like pre-LOI all the way through closing and takeover, right? And so I wanted to experience everything before I like handed it off to somebody else to do, right? Because ultimately, like I want to be able to bring on partners, well, we are doing that now, bring on partners to fill certain roles that it takes in order to close on a property like this. And so with that being said, like we pretty much did, I would say 90% of the work, right? Like our mentor was there to be a sounding board and answer questions. We also had a KP on the team. And then we had somebody else who was bringing capital, but also going to help with asset management. And then we had a boots on the ground, right? And so we were all in effect, like we were the lead sponsors, like we were carrying this deal to closing on our backs, right? And like we experienced every little piece of it all along the way. So now that it's closed and everything like that, Suzy and I are asset managing, as well as one of our other partners. And then of course we have our mentor to lean back on, because our mentor is part of the deal. Okay. He is a general partner. He has a stake in it, right? Like he never asked for anything. He never asked for, which is amazing. And that's why he's just an incredible human being, like always gives and never asks for anything in return. So he never asked for me to give him any money for anything. He never asked to be part of the general partnership team or anything like that. But like, I wanted to give that to him, right? I was like, dude, we couldn't have had any of this without you. So like, I want to give you a part of this equity of the general partnership team. And I want to give you a part of this acquisition fee because I appreciate, all of what you've done for us, right? So like he never asked for any of it, but I gave it to him. So, but now he's part of the deal, and now he's helping us through asset management whenever we need him, right?
But like how we chose them all was that, like, I guess Michael and I were very clear from the beginning, like what we thought we could do, right? And what we needed from the team, because you never want to create a team where you're just like butting heads with other individuals, right? Because that then just makes a whole different level of stress and your alignment is off. And then it doesn't feel like it's worth it at all. And so like Michael and I, took that step back. We're like, okay, well, through these investor calls, we think we can bring this much capital. So like, if we're taking down deals of this amount, then we need to find partners to bring that delta, So like, that was one step. And then with the KP portion, I mean, we just needed that because it was our first deal and we needed the experience, for our loan, which brought like our KP and a huge piece of like why we wanted our mentor. But it was like saying like, this is what you'll be doing as boots on the ground, and because I didn't have like a lot of investor relation experience, like bringing somebody else on to help with that so that it wasn't me just like going in blind, it was just finding the places where we would need the most help and then making sure that the people we brought on knew how to, I guess, fill that gap. And that's how we chose the team. Like we didn't, like, I mean, I'm sure we could have found people that we got along with really well right away. But like, if we were all doing the same thing, then it just doesn't make sense, right? So it was really like being patient to find the like certain people who fit the roles and even going past that, right? Because right now we're under contract for another deal, but like the team has slightly changed, and it's slightly changed because, of people's interest, even at the time, like we wanted bigger deals. So we knew we were going to have to bring on people who could bring more capital, and who had like a different net worth and liquidity. So like everything, like each deal can change however you need it to in order to fit, right? Because if your goals are to scale, you have to find partners who are also wanting to scale with you, but they can't just say it, you know, like they have to embody it as well. They have to be able to bring the investors if that's part of their team. They have to be able to even have that bandwidth, you know, because when you do scale, you're adding like potentially 100 plus more families that you have to serve. So like you have to think about it like in that sense, and don't feel like you have to keep your original team because that's who you started with, right? Like you can just do it deal by deal as you need to grow.
Great. One of the questions in the chat, how do you talk to investors when one, they don't have real estate, they don't have real deals to ask to invest, when you don't have a real deal to invest? And then two, when there are other better known syndicators who are giving them almost the same returns, doing the same thing? Good question.
Yeah, so no, those are two great questions. So because we didn't have deals, like that's where the consistency came in, like showing that we were in the space, you know, and like this goes along even with our website. So like people could refer back to our website, you know, because after they set up a Calendly call with us, the Calendly routes them to our website. So then they learn more about us, and then they can see the education that we're putting out with the blog posts, and they can like read about our investment thesis and like just read any of our articles. So that shows like, oh, they are becoming experts in the field and I can see them doing it, right? Because the information is there. And like when we post on LinkedIn continuously, you know, that's another touch point because it's also staying top of mind. Like if you never post, then how are people just supposed to remember you, right? Because I mean, even with that question, there are so many other syndicators out there. So how are you even going to get remembered? So it's that consistency of like putting out content or showing up in the meetings, you know, in the space. And so that's really what it was. Cause I mean, initially too, people are like, oh, whoa, you're in the UK, you know, this already seems like a red flag. You know, I mean, because before all of this, if we were to have asked people like, hey, do you want to get on a Zoom call? I can guarantee you half of them would have been like, what are you talking about? You know, like, no, I don't want to get on a Zoom call with you. So it was just like being in the space consistently and showing that we were serious and showing like, yes, we are submitting LOIs, you know, because like when you get in the breakout rooms, naturally people ask like, oh, what have you been up to? So when you say like submitting LOIs, you're doing this. And, you know, we had been sending out newsletters as well. And so that's where we could put all the progress, you know, like, oh, here are people that we met and this is the great experience that we have. And this is how many LOIs we've been submitting. And we found a really great property management company to work with. And so it's just like giving those updates all the time. And then to the second question, there are a lot of us out there as syndicators, right? But it's like, how are you making yourself stand out? And so like for Michael and I, it's two things. And so initially, like on our one-to-one calls, we're asking like, why did you start investing in real estate? And like, cause that gets you talking about like your deepness, right? It could be, I mean, it could just be as simple as like you want to build wealth. But a lot of times we found people talking about their families, you know, like they want to retire their parents or they want their children to not have to worry about college, you know, they just want to create a better life for like the people that they surround themselves with. Like they want to be generous with the people that they love the most. So that was number one, you know, literally just asking why. Instead of talking about numbers, we just talked about, we treated them as people because that's what they are, right? Like I want to get to know you and your goals. I don't necessarily need to talk about numbers because we're all giving the same returns or pretty much giving the same returns, you know? But the second thing is that we actually focus on like a different ROI. And I know, Andy, you mentioned this at the beginning, but it's return on impact. So what I mean by that is, when we look and create business plans, we think about how can we impact the families that we're serving in these communities a different way. And so with our first acquisition in Harper's Lodge, our big thing was adding washer and dryer connections and then in-unit washer and dryers. And this really stood out to us because one, of the pandemic, like a lot of times when Michael and I actually ran in the morning, we run after or past this one laundromat, and I was constantly looking in. And one day I was like, I would really dislike being here right now. Like half of the washers and dryers are cut off. So, that's half the amount of traffic that can come in, but that also adds twice as much wait, or like a wait time, right? You have to go in there and hope that everything is free, and you have to just sit there. But like during COVID, I don't actually think people could stay there and sit there. So like that's a whole nother level of stress. So it's like, besides providing that basic need of shelter, what can we do to impact their lives in a positive way? And like the washer and dryers really stood out, right? And we thought about like, can our business plan include resident events? Because if they can't, there is no point, like for us at least, right? Like, because we want to be able to build a community there. And how do you build a community if nobody's getting together? It was like thinking about those little things outside of the box, because when we can create a community where people are like focusing now on thriving instead of surviving, like just taking little bits of that away, then that ripple effect is what makes everything better, right? Because they can put that positive effect in their family or in their workplace. So like that's something that we talk about, like how we want to, make an impact on the residents, how we want to make an impact, on the environment. And by that, it's even introducing like sustainability partners, because that's really big for us. And it's really something like that is actually really simple. Like Oklahoma has a lot of green initiatives, and it's just reaching out to like the company, or an individual within the company and saying like, hey, do you want to come check out the property? And they easily say yes. It's like right away. And if it benefits the residents, you actually get a bigger
Rebate.
Yeah, rebate, and so then it's a win-win for everyone. So it's like just thinking about how can we do more, and something that we're actually going to implement in this next deal, it's called Offer or Rent Plus. And what it does is that for the residents who want to tie their credit score or tie their credit to paying their rent payments, like it'll help their credit score go up. So, it's like, it's just thinking of little ways like outside of the box to impact the residents. And so like with those two things, that's what we would talk about with investors. It was like we had made our own branding. I mean, that's really what it was. It's just talking about yourself and your branding and how you're going to like stand out against everybody, because they will invest in deals because of you, not necessarily because of the numbers. So like, it's just getting to that deeper level of connection.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. And you mentioned the return on impact, which I think is just it's phenomenal. And think about how you can truly impact the lives of the people that are living in those apartments. Neil Bawa has stated this: when he goes to find deals, he actually makes sure that when he purchases a property, that the tenants can afford the rent. So if you're thinking about raising the rent, you have to make sure that they can afford it. And typically that's 1/3 of their monthly income would go towards rent. So if they're pressing that already, and then you're going to go and try to do value add, and you're all of a sudden squeezing those renters out of a place to live. And it's not a positive impact on those renters. So you're spot on with that. Is how do you take care of those people in those places? And that's one of them. And you mentioned a ton there. Like, I think it's a great idea, taking care of them with those in-unit washer and dryers. Like that's phenomenal. That's really cool.
Yeah. And to add to that too, there's a lot of little things too that a lot of people don't know about. Like, or I'll just mention one example that doesn't really increase rents, but it also increases the NOI. Is that's getting like a cable or a internet contract on the property, right? So because you can negotiate, if you have 88 units, for example, you can go to a cable or internet provider and say, hey, we have 88 units. We'll guarantee you that you have the rights to these people getting internet and cable through you, and you usually get it at a discount because you can come in with 88 contracts. So you get it at a discount for them. Those residents are already going to be paying that local cable company anyways, right? But now they're getting it at a discount. So it's actually reducing their overall cost. But then there's a profit sharing for you, right? So it's a little bit of work on your end to set up the contract and things like that, but it's a profit sharing for you and it's cheaper for the residents. It's just a win-win all around.
Yeah, and I know Michael said it was only going to do one, but like I just want to add more because I think it's so cool. So like you can apply to be like a Tesla partner, because like chargers need to be everywhere and Elon Musk does not own all of the land. So like applying to be like you can have one charger and like that will bring in income, and that has nothing to do with the residents, but you thought outside the box, like Amazon lockers, like that's another thing where Amazon can pay you, it's outside of the box. It's like just thinking like, how can we have happier residents and not add the extra fees? And sorry, because now I just love this. It's like little things too. Like if you have a pool, you can easily sell like sunscreen and pool toys. That is not anything to do with the like adding fees to the residents or whatever, but it makes one more thing convenient, and granted, there will be like a little bit of upside, but like the convenience is what they'll remember, and like even for new residents who come in and like apply at your apartment complex, like you can offer like a move-in package almost, but what that would just be is like moving boxes and tape and like giving them a whole outline like, hey, these are all the steps that you'll have to do with like forwarding your address and doing this, like I don't know how much that could cost, but it's just thinking of little ways to like create a convenience for the resident without adding fees to their, I guess, overall bill, right? Because like you don't want to go in, because I used to live in an apartment, like I had valet trash, which I really did not enjoy, but then like you could have a pet fee, you had pest control. I'm pretty sure in the summer, like they charged me for like the pool fee. And I was just like, is this ever going to end? Like my rent, granted, I lived in Boulder, Colorado, but like my rent was like astronomical. But like then to add more, I was like, I am not a fan. And I can, I don't create that much garbage as a person. So like having valet trash seemed like worthless to me. So it's also thinking like the fees that we do have at the property, do they actually make sense for everyone? Like will half of them enjoy this and the other half hate it? And I know you can never make everybody 100% happy, but like for me, I'm not going to inconvenience 50 people just to make 50 people feel good. Like I'm trying to find ways where majority of the people are going to like the task or well, I don't know, amenity. Yeah. That's the word. Right. Yeah.
That's cool. So that's just great nuggets there. That was just some really good tips on how to better people's lives and return some investment to your investors too, right? So that's great. We talked a little bit about this on our call earlier this week, and I want to get to it. I'm wondering about how you manage your workflow and keep your daily life in order too, and how do you, and then when you're approaching and you find a deal, like how do you manage all those little tasks that go along with that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Andy. So because of my training in the Air Force, I've actually, besides being an instructor at the Air Force Academy and then being a biochemist as well, like I also was trained as a program manager. So like I have like all this formal training. So I'm very thankful the Air Force has been able to teach me that, or at least send me to school to get certifications for program management. And so like with that, like I now have taken all what I've learned from the Air Force for program management, and now I've applied that to real estate. And so what I use now is this software program called Asana to like manage. It's a project management software, and I use that to manage everything now. And I can kind of, I can show the audience here. I use it for everything now. Like I use Asana for closing on deals, like acquisitions. We use it for asset management. We use it for like our podcast stuff. We use it for our videos that we make. I use it for my PhD project as well. So,
and even while Michael's pulling this up, like, because at first it can seem daunting. It's like, well, I don't have program management experience. I don't have project management experience. How am I supposed to know to do this? But like within every business, there's like processes, right? And there's systems, and like that's how they all work. So like even if you break it down that way, like be like, oh well, like the places I work have this, and it's it works for them, and like everybody else, like every business has those processes. So it's like just taking that step back, and deciding like, oh, I do want to figure this out, but how do I do it? I mean, and you can just literally start at Google. Like, how do I set up the processes I need for my business to run smoothly? Like, it's just thinking like just one step back, just like making your blind spots just a little bit wider. Like, ooh, what can I search?
Yeah. So I'll just kind of walk you through. This is everything here for the park at 1220 acquisition. This is our current acquisition we're going on right now. And this is everything. So I have everything from pre-LOI through, items to include. Don't forget, include these in the LOI here. Negotiating, these are things I need to do during negotiation of the LOI, including in the PSA, things that I needed to make sure that we're doing during PSA negotiation, digital due diligence, physical due diligence, entity creation, SEC attorney stuff, capital raising, leading to closing and everything like that. So like this is kind of where we're at right now. Like we're done with the capital raise, and now we're kind of like leading on through closing right now. And so what's really cool about this is like I can, with all the members on our team, I can just assign everybody a task, right? So like see myself and other members of the team, and I can just assign it out and they get notified. And you can also set a due date as well. It's kind of up in the air, like when the due dates are. Like most people just like knock it out when they get assigned it, right? And then you can also set the priorities here. Obviously here, like for example, I have priorities set very high. Like once we got the due diligence documents, I was like, hey, these are the number one priority. We have to have these done by this date, right? So
yeah, and you'll see that it's blank just because like for this particular one, we left it blank if like everybody needed to participate in it. So it was easier, I guess, to do that than to add all of us.
Yeah. And then so what's really cool too is we can chat. Like there's like a chat feature here where you can like chat with each other back and forth, and everybody who's on this project gets notified every time there's like a chat. So this is really, really awesome. Not only for like acquisitions of a property, but also like during asset management. And so we have like our regional manager and our on-site property manager on there, and the CEO of the property management company. Okay. She can log in whenever she wants to, and she's not on there all the time, but like our regional and our on-site manager are on there all the time, and they're chatting back and forth, right? Instead of like going back and trying to figure out, okay, well, you sent an email about like, oh, you're going to buy pool furniture, right? Just an example here. Let's see here.
Yeah. And I mean, it just, you stop checking your email, right? Because like, that's a huge thing too. Like an email is like a time suck for all of us. And so being able to just check the Asana instead of reaching out to people, like, and also interrupting their day is like a huge thing, right? Like we can just make a comment or see if a comment has been made, and it's like, oh, cool, my question was answered and I didn't need to send that email.
Yeah. And it's connected to that particular task. So you know what you're talking about all the time. There's a log of stuff you already talked about, so you don't have to rehash it again. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So she just like drops pictures in here. Like, hey, do you approve this pool furniture? Yep, nice. We're good to go. So it's like, okay, this is how much this is going to cost. And I'm like, sounds great. Yeah, I order it. Instead of having to wait for our weekly calls and things like that, like we can just chat, we chat like all day, like every day on here, which is really awesome.
Yeah. So then also when we're getting on our weekly calls, it's not discussing things like, can we order pool furniture? It's like, oh, okay, like these are like the critical items that we need to be talking about. And throughout the week, we can just have like the non-critical items like be reviewed in Asana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's great. And from my understanding, there's a free version and a paid version. Are you using the paid version?
So this is actually the free version right now. So you get all these features. So you have on the left-hand side here, you can have like your workspace. And then the free version, you can have up to 15 people. Okay. And it only allows you can assign tasks to people. You can have the due date, and you can have like one custom thing, which is like, I just chose priority here. I think that might be the only one. I'm not sure, but the paid version allows you to have, multiple different things like status and what stage you're at and things like that. That's like for more intense like project management stuff. Yeah. And timeline and things like that. I think timeline is a paid thing as well. Yeah. So, but a list is just is good. So it does get pretty prohibitively expensive unless you're very because like you have to pay like per seat if you're actually paying for it.
Yeah.
So like we have like I think 13 people in here right now across like multiple different things, and so I think it's like $13 per person per month, which is pretty expensive. Yeah.
It
If
adds
you
up.
go paid version, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. That was, looks like a very great way to organize your team. Make sure you have all your tasks in there and, know how to do this. And then you could basically take this template and use it for your next one and make it even better for the next one and, keep building from there. So, and then that's part of your system, right? So then you build your system and then you keep going from there. So cool. Let's change to a different topic. Let's talk about let's think about the last 12 months. What has been your biggest challenge over the last 12 months?
Okay, so that's a great question, and it's really hard to answer. So I think this is a common theme that a lot of people have. And so when I say this, I'm going to expand, but like not having enough time, in your day, it's like you always have tasks that you didn't complete to bring to the next day. But like once we figured out, like, how do we manage our time better? Like what are we doing throughout the day? And like actually something that Michael and I did was we did like a time audit essentially. And we used this app called Toggle. And like what it was that it would track our activity. And I mean, you manually have to put it in through the app. But like how long you're spending time on it. And then at the end of the week, you get like the analytics that show like, this is what you spent time doing. And like when you see what you spent your time doing that week, like, because we did it by every 15 minutes. So like it truly knew exactly what we were doing. You find out how much free time you actually do have and how you could be utilizing it better, And so our challenge really was, how do we get more time? Like, how do we find better balance? And so through that time audit, we actually started like time blocking. And the biggest thing with time blocking is actually just giving yourself enough time for the tasks and actually doing them, right? Because like that's really hard to do. But it's like, okay, if you're going to make up time to create content, like do not just put it in a half-hour slot, like 4 different times of the day, right? Like try to find like a true 2 hours where you can work on it and be really, I guess, diligent at it. And you'll find out that like the flow becomes much easier because it is a lot to handle and do, like having to talk to people, having to go to meetups, having to underwrite deals, having to talk to brokers, the list can go on. But like when you take a step back and like look at how you're actually using your time, you get way more of it back and you don't even realize it because you didn't realize that it was like gone or it had potential to be there to begin with. So that was actually our biggest challenge is like, how do we find more time when we all have the same 24 hours?
Did you find you found that balance and you found the time and you find the balance of like managing it all?
Yeah, I found out I eat like a lot of snacks throughout the day. I'm like, whoa, like I do not need these half-hour snack breaks this often, but it's like little things like that. You don't realize that like while you're like eating snacks, it's like mindless. It's, it's just like trying to be more intentional with your day and what you do. But yeah, you do find balance because then you can actually see like where everything has its place, right? Because no matter what, I mean, like as entrepreneurs, we are always going to have a to-do list that has more on it. So it's like also telling yourself, if I have a critical item on my list today, that I need to get that done. It's not like, oh, I did 15 like tasks that weren't that important and left the critical item one, because that's when like the stress builds up, right? It's like, oh, but I didn't get this done. I need to stay at my computer longer. I don't know what to do, but like if you place it on your calendar somewhere and put the correct amount of time in, like you'll get it done and you'll find the balance. And then the next day you can like choose your next critical item, and the next day you can choose that, because then you see the balance of what's truly important and what actually needs to be done. Like, because we think that those last like 3 emails needs to go out, but it's never 3 emails. It's like 5 emails later, you've checked something on social media, you've opened something else up. But like when you tell yourself like, this is my critical item and this is when I need to work on it, that's when all your other tasks can easily flow, and like become an item the next day, because it all does end up getting done. It's just, we've created like this sense of urgency with everything that we do, when really only 1 or 2 things in the day really need a sense of urgency.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. There are a couple of good questions that are posted. Let me just walk through them. Raymond asked, you've alluded to your social media presence a few times. What are you specifically doing? It sounds like LinkedIn, blog posts, connecting to websites. Could you explain the synergy and strategy between the work mediums? And I'd also like you to touch on your podcast that's coming up. So I'm interested and excited about that.
Yeah, so I'll talk through like our social media presence. I'll let Suzy talk about the podcast. So yeah, it's hard. I mean, I'm bigger on LinkedIn, and this is a very touchy thing, right? Like, because you want to be omnipresent, right? But it's hard to be omnipresent. Nobody can be like Yona Weiss and be on every single platform and just crushing it. So, but maybe you can be if you're very intentional about it. But yeah, anyway, so I'm very big on LinkedIn, and I try to post at least 3 times a week, if not more, on there. But then also engaging on the comments that are being put on my post, right? So I think that's very important as well. And also engaging with other people's comments or other people's posts as well. So just posting on there and then providing value that way, and like providing information. I also, like I think Andy has mentioned earlier about the videos. So I try to post videos often as possible, like probably like once a week. But now that I've gotten a lot of positive response from the videos. And so what we're actually doing now is starting a YouTube channel on June 15th. So be on the lookout for that. And we're going to be kind of transitioning all those videos onto YouTube. I mean, I'll share them on other social media platforms, but kind of having a YouTube channel, and we will be releasing like 3 videos a week on YouTube, which seems like a lot, but if you batch everything, you'll be amazed like how much content you can create in like a long weekend or something like that.
But yeah, so even with that though too, so like with the blog posts, like I can easily make that into a video, right? So initially you might hear like, oh my gosh, they're doing blog posts and videos, like how? But like I'm literally just going to talk through a blog post, because people do want like 2 forms of mediums. But like for the blog post, like even to generate ideas, right? Like a big thing is like, well, I don't know what to write about, or everything that I would want to write about, people are already writing about. But the thing is that like your audience is different from everybody else's audience. So like, as long as one person in your audience like has no idea what you're talking about, then it's worth it, And like even how I got my ideas, because that can seem daunting at the beginning too. I mean, I did what the conferences taught me and told me to do. And it's like, I follow like the people who I see as industry leaders and look through their blog content and be like, oh no, this is something I could write about. Oh, that's another topic I could write about, and you put it in your own words and you add your own examples to it. And it's now your blog post. But like when you're posting that, then, in order to connect it to your website, like for generational wealth, for example, somebody might see generational wealth and be like, what is this? Why should I have to read it? But it's like making like that catchy headline and then saying like, oh, you want to learn more? Like, here's the link to the rest of the blog post. And then that's how you suck them to your website, or even cost segregation. If I were just to write like, oh, I want to learn more about cost segregation, people would be like, I'm going to continue to scroll, right? But when you say something like, oh, wouldn't you love to like be in a lower tax bracket? A lot of people are like, yes, I would, And so then that's like how you draw them in to want to go to the website. But really, like, there isn't a lot of difference from what I post on Facebook to what I post on Instagram and to what I post on LinkedIn. Yes, like you will have somebody following you on all three platforms, but it doesn't mean they're going to see it on all three of them, right? Like they could not get on Instagram for 2 days, but see it on LinkedIn. And some people may only see it on LinkedIn. So like for me, it's as simple as copying and pasting it. And I mean, we've used tools where it's just like a scheduler, right? So like I put my content in, I say when I want it to be posted, and it just goes out. And like that creates like another streamlined events. But I guess like that's really how we create the synergy like between it all, is that we just find ways to repurpose it, because like getting people to your website is like the most important part, right? Because then they can see like your lead generation magnet and like they can learn more about you. So it's like pushing them to want to learn more about us and having them want to like read more, I guess, essentially is how we get them there.
Mm-hmm. No,
but the podcast, sorry, I was like, I feel like something's missing. But so then, right, it's like, okay, it seems like another level. What do you do? Like, how did you add all of that in? So just for us, like now that the systems and processes like feel more in place, and we feel like we have a better balance, the next thing for us, because we cannot go to in-person events for quite some time, was like exposure. And it was like, okay, well, how do we reach more people with less time, right? Because like I can only go to so many meetups from midnight to 1:30 without being a functional human the next day. But also what I noticed was that I have met a lot of people who are leveraging real estate investing to create an impact. And so I was like, because I'm so big on it, like that's what the whole podcast is about. Because like the reason we get into real estate investing, right, is like a deep why. And all of our whys vary, but all of our whys have the common theme of creating an impact, whether it's on ourselves or on our families or one other person, there's something there. I mean, even if somebody wants to create more wealth for themselves, that's an impact, on themselves. And so I just wanted to create a podcast where we were talking about that, because that could give somebody the idea of like, oh, what I want to do deep down is something that other people are doing. Like it is truly possible, because that's what gets you to like write more blog posts and get up in the morning and stay up later at night, because when you have that momentum, like pushing you forward, it makes it all worth it. And then it doesn't feel like work anymore, because it feels like you're reaching your purpose in life.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That meaning, that why, that's driving you, that's pulling you to, that's great. That's perfect. Yeah. Awesome. We have another question. EC asks, so for your first deal, did your other GPs have experience? And if they didn't, or if that was their first time through the GP process as well, would you recommend that your other sponsors have experience or not?
Yeah, so for our first deal, 2 members of the general partnership team were very experienced. So we had our mentor, and then our key principal as well, who brought the net worth and liquidity, or who added to the net worth and liquidity. He also had experience on the general partnership side of things.
Okay.
So I was going to just add, like, if you form a team who doesn't have experience, I guess it just depends like on your investors, right? Because like sometimes investors will want that experience to know that it's going to move forward. But like, what are you doing then to learn more about asset management? Because that's really what people want to know about, right? Like, can you like actually have this asset function? So like if you've gotten to a place where like your investors are comfortable with like your momentum, then it could work. But it really just depends on like your investor base, right? Because if they don't think that you can get it done with the experience that you have on your team, then you're not going to get the deal to essentially close. Like you won't have that chance to actually show them that you can do it.
Okay, that's good advice. Okay, so we're approaching an hour and 15 minutes here, and it's like 1:15 in the morning for these guys. So we appreciate all of what you've given to us tonight, all of the golden nuggets of wisdom that you've gained over the past year. What can we do for you? How can we help you? How can this audience help you guys?
I think the biggest thing is once our podcast, put on your calendars June 1st, and that's what our podcast is launched. It's called the Adventures of a Real Estate Investor. I'll drop that in the chat. I think Misi has another question too. I'll answer that in just a second. But I'll put if you check that out. So it's launching on June 1st, which is next Tuesday. Put that in your calendar, and please just check it out. If you like what you hear, please take the time to leave us a rating and review. That'd be awesome. We are doing a giveaway. So like the first 50 reviews that we get, like once we hit 50 reviews, we're doing a giveaway, and 3 things we're giving away for people who left us a rating or review, and taking a screenshot of that and sent that to us via email. We're giving away either a GoPro Hero 9, a $250 plane voucher, or a Osprey backpack. So it's like all like adventure themes, because our whole branding is Adventurous Real Estate Investors, and the podcast is the Adventures of a Real Estate Investor. And so all of the cool gifts are adventure based, if you will. So
yeah, and like the big momentum behind that is that like we want to make new and networthy, because then our guests like will be in front of a much larger audience on iTunes, so like that's where like the urgency from the giveaway comes in, just because we want to be able to have like our guests be able to just be seen by way more people, because really like all of our guests are amazing, but like for other people to hear their stories, like more people would just be phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we will launch 3 episodes on next Tuesday, and then there'll be 1 episode every day for the weekdays, all the way through 2 weeks worth. And then it's going to be a weekly podcast after that, so every Tuesday. And then the YouTube channel as well is called The Adventures of a Real Estate Investor. And then we will have 3 videos on there. So we'll have our video from the podcast, of course, and then a video of Suzy walking through, talking about the blog post that she did. And then I'll also do a video. And we're actually, when we launch the podcast, when we launch the YouTube channel, it'll actually have, Suzy and I will walk you through everything you need to do and everything you need to include. Like we have in a Asana that I just showed you, everybody, from pre-LOI all the way through closing and takeover. We kind of walk through all those things and elaborate on them a little bit more. So like that'll be like a little mini course we'll have on the YouTube channel there. And that launches June 15th.
Cool. That's awesome. Great.
But,
yeah, Misi's question, what are the things that you outsource to keep balanced?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And so we have 2 VAs right now. One's more of an executive assistant, and the other one's a video editor. And so since we're launching the YouTube channel, like I was starting to edit videos myself, and I was like, you know what, I can hire this out. This is something that I don't want to spend my time doing. I'd rather spend my time underwriting and finding deals and things like that. And so that's one thing he does. He will be like, I'll just be filming and then sending the videos, and he just does everything. And we kind of control everything through Asana as well, like seeing the progress of video production and editing and stuff like that. And the other thing too is we have an executive assistant who tracks our KPIs for us, and also has been helped like looking up certain things that we want to look up, like just doing data research for us.
But like a big thing, right, is like we are a real estate investor. So like anything that doesn't have to do with real estate investor is what you should be outsourcing, right? Like we are not social media experts. We are not, even for the emails, that I said I sent at the beginning, like to people at the conferences, that is something you can easily outsource, right? Because like what I need to do is be able to have the conversations with people. Like that's what I need to focus on. So like if I could have gotten like 2 hours back in my day for all of those conferences, like I could have been focusing on something else, so it's like figuring out like where your like $2,000 tasks are, those are the ones you should be focusing on. But anything that is really like a $10, $20, $30 task, an hour task, like those are all the things you should be outsourcing.
That's great.
And I just dropped our contact. There's like a link and it has like, it goes to a Google Doc, which has like all of our contact info. So like Facebook, Instagram, whatever, LinkedIn, everything is just there in that Google Sheet, our website and stuff like that. So feel free to check that out as well. And then you can send us an email through there. And then also set up a call with us if you'd like to do that.
Great. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. This has been fantastic, and you guys are amazingly sharp for 1 a.m. Like I wouldn't be able to function. You guys get a lot. It seems like you get a lot of practice and you're very good at it. So nice job tonight. And it seems like I just reading the chat, it seems like people are really engaged in it too. So again, just a reminder for the group, if you get that survey for the meetup, just give your honest feedback there. The next meetup, I will have Adam Adams on. He is a multifamily investor out of Colorado. He does podcasts, TV shows, conferences, puts on conferences. He's going to be speaking about 3 reasons why now is a good time for multifamily. So look out for that. I should have that posted here in the next couple of days, and you can go on Meetup and connect there. So awesome, Michael and Suzy, really appreciate it tonight, and great words of wisdom. And we will definitely connect with you through the through everything you posted there, and looking at your podcast and as well as your YouTube channel. I think that's super exciting. It sounds like there's some great content.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. It was a pleasure being on this meetup, and it's great seeing everybody. Thank you so much for all the comments in the chat. I really appreciate that. And good seeing you, Misi.
Great. Okay, perfect. Well, with that, I'll conclude, and everyone have a good night, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks again, Andy.
See you guys.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.